Hello, folks. My name is Miss Michael, and I'm with Miss Coke here, and we're going to talk to you today about a little bit about cell structure. We're going to be talking about animal and plant cell structure and how those organelles work together. So the picture you're looking at is the cell membrane. It's actually a very complex structure that has proteins and carbohydrates and cholesterol. The main component is a phospholipid bilayer. Um, you know that is selectively permeable, which means it decides whether what materials are able to move in and out. And there are various ways that it moves in and out of the cell membrane. The cell membrane is not something that just surrounds the cell and provides shape and provides a way of transporting material. It's also a way for cells to signal to other cells. It has receptors on its outside. In the case of diabetes, insulin is a protein that binds to receptors to the cell membrane so that glucose can flow into the cell for the mitochondria. So the cell membrane is also responsible for communication, cell signaling. The arrangement of proteins on the outside of the cell membrane also is an identifier of the cell. Just as you're able to recognize different people by the arrangement of their proteins, a cell can be identified by its arrangement of proteins. All cells have a cell membrane. It is a common structure between all cells. And again, it does provide shape and protection.
Okay, our next structure is a vesicle. So this one is similar to a cell membrane, and that's why we're talking about this one next. A vesicle is a small structure that consists of fluid or particles enclosed by a lipid bilayer. That's actually the same lipid bilayer as the cell membrane. If you look at the picture here on the slide, you can see some examples and you can tell that things are entering and exiting the cell. The cell membrane is kind of pinching off into little vesicles. So they form naturally during secretion through exocytosis, uptake through phagocytosis, and they transport large materials. If we have a large quantity or something very big that is getting into the cell, needing to go into the cytoplasm. They're created by the Golgi apparatus, and again, that lipid bilayer is the same as the cell membrane, which is why it can fuse with it, like you see in this image.
The Golgi apparatus is also known as the Golgi body. So if you kind of cross that word out here, it is also known as the Golgi body. And the Golgi body or the Golgi apparatus is going to be like a mail packaging place, like a post office. It helps process and package proteins and lipids. And it's especially there for proteins that are destined to be exported from the cell to be removed. The Golgi apparatus, it's going to appear in the cell as a series of stacked membranes. When proteins come out of the rough endoplasmic reticulum, they go into the Golgi for further processing. It also makes new vesicles as well as the cell membrane. It's going to make new vesicles out of that existing membrane, and it puts substances into vesicles to be transported throughout the cell. That is the Golgi apparatus or the Golgi body. There is the diagram to the right that you can look at and see how that Golgi apparatus or that Golgi body operates in conjunction with the other organelles.
Okay, the next organelle is the lysosome. These are found in every eukaryotic cell, so that includes plant and animal cells. Lysosomes get rid of waste products. Maybe before you've heard them called the trashman or recycling of the cell. And they actually use enzymes. These enzymes are very important because they are able to break down various waste products inside of a cell. Without a lysosome, you would get a buildup of waste, and that could be a very toxic and dangerous situation. Lysosomes partner with vesicles to release large amounts of waste products from the cell.
So, if we look at all of these structures that we've just reviewed, um, you can see that they work together as a system. You have the cell membrane working with the vesicles to release and take in large materials. You also have the vesicles, lysosomes, and Golgi apparatus that work together to break down waste from the cell and remove it through that cell membrane. If one of these was not functioning, there would be serious issues in terms of building up of waste within the cell.
Okay, the next structure is the endoplasmic reticulum. This is a very large dynamic structure that has many functions. The primary function is folding, modification, and transport of proteins. That's what the rough endoplasmic reticulum does. And then the smooth endoplasmic reticulum functions in lipid synthesis and metabolism. So if you look at your picture, you can see that the rough endoplasmic reticulum has ribosomes dotted on its exterior. That's why it's related to proteins. And then the smooth endoplasmic reticulum is lacking those ribosomes on the exterior.
Which leads us to the next organelle relationship, ribosomes. Ribosomes can be found on the rough endoplasmic reticulum, but they can also be found freely floating in the cytoplasm. This is the location of the destination where messenger RNA ends up going from the nucleus. It's the area where you have transfer and ribosomal RNA, and that RNA is there to assemble chains of amino acids or to make proteins. The way that ribosomes uses the code from the DNA is through the ribonucleic acid, the RNA. Ribosomes are found in prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells, so it is essential for making all the necessary proteins that have all those necessary functions in the cell. The ribosomes that are attached to the rough endoplasmic reticulum end up working with the endoplasmic reticulum to do some of that modification of proteins.
All right, our next organelle or cell structure is the nucleus. This is the structure that within eukaryotic cells will contain the DNA. It is packaged into chromosomes inside of the nucleus, and DNA is copied or replicated inside of the nucleus. DNA makes strands of mRNA in a process called transcription, and the nucleolus, which is the darker area kind of in the center of the nucleus, makes the ribosomes.
So the way that these organelles work together is the nucleus has the code, and that code is copied into a messenger RNA strand. You also have the nucleolus inside of the nucleus that makes ribosomes. Ribosomes uses the RNA, that code that comes from the nucleus, to actually make proteins or assemble chains of amino acids, also known as polypeptide chains. Ribosomes are freely floating or attached to that endoplasmic reticulum. And again, the endoplasmic reticulum, as it relates to ribosomes, is it does part of the folding and the modification and the transporting of these proteins that eventually end up going to the Golgi body or the Golgi apparatus.
Okay, the next organelle is the mitochondria. You might have called this one the powerhouse of the cell before. It's usually everyone's favorite. The mitochondria are responsible for energy production inside of cells. They produce energy in a form that we call adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, that is needed for the cell to carry out all of its different functions and to survive. A series of chemical reactions called cellular respiration create the energy. And in cellular respiration, we need glucose and oxygen, those are required to produce ATP, that form of energy, carbon dioxide, and water. Now, the mitochondria is also really cool because it has its own set of DNA called mitochondrial DNA, and it is located in most eukaryotic cells.
The chloroplasts are structures that are going to be found in photosynthetic cells like plant cells, protocells, or bacterial cells. They use the carbon dioxide and water that is produced in respiration to make glucose and oxygen. That glucose and oxygen is vital for the mitochondria. So chloroplasts, they carry out photosynthesis using solar energy. Again, they only occur in autotrophs. They also are complex and have their own DNA. And again, they can be found in plant cells, some protocells, or bacterial cells. So, the cell membrane, mitochondria, and chloroplasts. If we want to think about how these three organelles work together as a system, um, respiration and photosynthesis are two biological processes that rely on each other. The mitochondria needs oxygen and glucose that's produced by chloroplasts, and the chloroplasts need oxygen and um, they need carbon dioxide and water that is produced by respiration in the mitochondria. How do these organelles receive these materials? The cell membrane. The cell membrane is going to be providing those materials to those two different organelles that work very closely together.
Okay, next we have the cell wall. The cell wall is an additional exterior structure surrounding certain bacterial, plant, fungus, and some protist cells. Plant cell walls are made up of cellulose, while fungus cell walls are made up of chitin, and peptidoglycan makes up eubacterial cell walls, and pseudo-peptidoglycan makes up archibacterial cell walls. All of that to say, the cell wall is an additional support for structure that can be found in many types of cells. Just know that this is never found in an animal cell.
The vacuoles are found in both animal and plant cells, but they are very large in plant cells. These are membrane bound cell organelles, and they are vital when it comes to helping a plant to maintain water balance. Again, they're very large. A single vacuole can take up most of the interior space of a plant cell. In animal cells, they're small and they do store waste products until they can be broken down and released by lysosomes. So, how does the cell wall, cell membrane, and vacuoles work together? Well, the cell wall, cell membrane, and central vacuole are going to help plants regulate their water movement, known as osmosis. And they also keep the plant cell strong enough to withstand a few days without water. They really do rely on each other to provide structure. And turgor pressure is something that is vital in this whole partnership.
Okay, our next one is the cytoplasm. The main components of the cytoplasm are a gel-like substance called cytosol, the organelles, which are suspended around in the cytoplasm, 80% water, so it is mostly made of water, and there are also some different proteins, salts, and sugars.
The centrioles are found in animal cells and they occur in pairs. When it comes to mitosis or cell division or cell growth, centrioles are vital in anchoring the spindle fibers, which help to create new nuclei and to create new cells. Again, these are found in animal cells and they are involved in the development of spindle fibers during mitosis or cell division or cell growth. They initiate cell division.